Welcome to an exclusive journey into American history, where true value is measured not in price, but in legacy. Today, we unlock the story behind the Jefferson 5-cent coin, an object so ordinary, yet rich with meaning. From the quiet strength of liberty to the unity of E pluribus unum, from In God We Trust to the elegant presence of Monticello, every detail reflects the spirit of its time. These coins moved through moments of crisis, confidence, and change, carried by generations who shaped the nation. Stay with us until the final moment, because the ending reveals how a simple nickel becomes a symbol of America itself. If you appreciate refined history and timeless stories, subscribe now, because true value is never accidental. Let's get started. The 1961 United States 5-cent coin, commonly known as the Jefferson nickel, bearing the inscriptions E pluribus unum, Monticello, Liberty, and In God We Trust, represents a specific moment in American history when tradition, politics, and everyday life quietly intersected through coinage. This coin was produced during the early years of the Cold War, at a time when national identity and unity were emphasized strongly in public symbols. The phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one, reflects the foundational idea of the United States as a union of states and people, while In God We Trust, which had been officially adopted as the national motto in 1956, underscored the country's ideological stance against atheistic communism during that era. Together, these inscriptions transformed an ordinary 5-cent piece into a small but powerful carrier of national values. The obverse of the 1961 Jefferson nickel features a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson was chosen for the nickel in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, as a way to honor his contributions to American democracy, individual liberty, and constitutional government. The word liberty appears to the right of Jefferson's profile, accompanied by the year 1961, symbolizing the enduring relevance of Jefferson's ideals in the modern United States. The inscription In God We Trust appears to the left, reinforcing the moral and spiritual language that had become prominent in American public life during the mid-20th century. The reverse of the coin depicts Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia estate, which he personally designed and considered one of his greatest achievements. Monticello was chosen for the reverse design to reflect Jefferson not only as a statesman, but also as an architect, thinker, and man of science. Above the image of Monticello is the phrase E pluribus unum, while below it appears Monticello and 5 cents, clearly identifying the denomination. Along the bottom edge is United States of America, grounding the coin firmly in its national identity. The building's detailed steps and domes symbolize stability, enlightenment, and the intellectual foundations of the nation. The 1961 nickel marked the final full year of the original Monticello reverse design before subtle modifications were introduced in later years. This makes the coin especially notable to collectors who value transitional moments in U.S. coinage. While the design itself did not dramatically change in 1961, it stands at the threshold between the classic mid-century look and the refinements that followed. The craftsmanship reflects the minting standards of the time, with sharp lines and balanced proportions intended for mass circulation rather than artistic experimentation. Coins bearing the D Mint mark were produced at the Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities responsible for supplying circulating coinage to the western United States. In 1961, the Denver Mint struck a large number of Jefferson nickels to meet everyday commercial demand. Because of this high production, the 1961 D nickel is generally not considered rare in circulated condition. However, its abundance also makes it an excellent example of how deeply integrated this coin was in daily American life, passing through countless hands in stores, diners, vending machines, and pockets across the country. The early 1960s were a period of social change and political tension in the United States, and the Jefferson nickel quietly circulated through events both ordinary and historic. In 1961, John F. Kennedy had just become president, the space race was accelerating, and civil rights movements were gaining momentum. While the nickel itself did not commemorate these events directly, it existed alongside them, serving as a silent witness to a transformative era. The consistent imagery of Jefferson and Monticello offered a sense of continuity amid rapid change. From a materials standpoint, the 1961 nickel was composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a composition that had been standard since the end of World War II. Unlike silver coins of earlier decades, the nickel's intrinsic metal value was low, reinforcing its role as a practical tool for commerce rather than a store of precious metal wealth. This composition allowed the coin to be durable and resistant to wear, which is why many examples still survive today in relatively good condition. Collectors often evaluate 1961 D. Jefferson nickels based on strike quality, surface preservation, and details in Jefferson's hair and Monticello's steps. While most circulated examples show wear, uncirculated and proof-like specimens can display remarkable clarity and luster. For some collectors, the coin's appeal lies not in rarity or high monetary value, but in its connection to a specific year and place in American history. It represents the everyday reality of money as both an object and a cultural artifact. Ultimately, the 1961 Jefferson nickel with the Denver Mint mark stands as a small but meaningful piece of the American story. Its inscriptions speak to unity, faith, liberty, and national identity, while its imagery connects political ideals with personal legacy through Thomas Jefferson and Monticello. Though modest in value, the coin carries decades of history, ideology, and human experience, reminding us that even the simplest objects can reflect the broader narrative of a nation. Keep a close eye on your change, because that hidden treasure might be sitting right in your pocket. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a big find. Stay tuned, because in the next video, we're diving into another legendary coin that could be worth a small fortune. Next up, the 1969 United States 5-cent coin, widely known as the Jefferson nickel, bearing the inscriptions E pluribus unum, Monticello, Liberty, and In God We Trust, reflects a period of intense change and tension in American history. By 1969, the United States was deeply involved in the Vietnam War, social movements were reshaping the nation, and trust in government institutions was being questioned. Despite these upheavals, the imagery and language on U.S. coinage remained steady, reinforcing continuity and shared national identity. The phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one, carried added weight during a time when the country was struggling to reconcile deep divisions while still presenting itself as a unified nation. The obverse of the 1969 Jefferson nickel features the familiar left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, a figure chosen to represent ideals of freedom, reason, and democratic governance. Jefferson's image had appeared on the nickel since 1938, and by 1969 it was deeply ingrained in American daily life. The word liberty appears alongside the date 1969, symbolizing the enduring promise of freedom even as Americans debated its meaning in the streets, courts, and classrooms. The inscription In God We Trust, positioned prominently, reflected the continued emphasis on faith as a moral foundation of the nation during the Cold War era. The reverse of the coin displays Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia estate, a structure that symbolized intellect, balance, and Enlightenment thinking. Jefferson designed Monticello himself, and its presence on the coin emphasized not only his political legacy, but also his identity as a philosopher, architect, and visionary. Above Monticello appears E pluribus unum, while below it are Monticello, 5 cents, and United States of America, clearly defining the coin's purpose and origin. The image of the building, especially its steps and dome, became a focal point for collectors evaluating the quality of the coin's strike. The year 1969 holds particular significance in American history, and the Jefferson nickel circulated during landmark moments such as the Apollo 11 moon landing, which symbolized technological achievement and national pride. While astronauts carried symbolic items to the moon, everyday coins like the nickel remained on Earth, moving through ordinary transactions that connected Americans to one another. The same year also saw major cultural shifts, protests, and generational divides, yet the nickel's design remained unchanged, offering a sense of stability amid uncertainty. Nickels bearing the D Mint mark were produced at the Denver Mint, which played a critical role in supplying coins for circulation across much of the United States. In 1969, the Denver Mint struck a large quantity of Jefferson nickels to meet commercial demand, making the 1969 D nickel common in circulation at the time. Because of this high production, the coin is not considered rare today, but it remains historically meaningful as a product of its era. Millions of Americans would have handled this coin without a second thought, using it for newspapers, coffee, parking meters, and public transportation. During the late 1960s, inflation and economic pressures were beginning to affect everyday life, increasing the importance of durable, low-denomination coinage. The 1969 nickel was composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a standard alloy that ensured durability and resistance to wear. Unlike earlier U.S. coins that contained silver, the nickel's value was tied almost entirely to its face value rather than its metal content. This composition reflected a shift toward practicality and mass utility in modern American currency. The design of the 1969 Jefferson nickel belongs to the later years of the original Monticello reverse, before major redesigns were introduced decades later. Collectors often examine these coins for details such as the sharpness of Jefferson's profile and the clarity of Monticello's steps, which can vary depending on the quality of the strike. While most examples show signs of circulation, well-preserved specimens offer insight into the minting standards and technology of the time. For many collectors, the appeal lies in condition rather than scarcity. As the nation faced questions about authority, freedom, and identity, the Jefferson nickel quietly continued its role as a functional object that connected Americans through everyday exchange. It passed through hands of students, workers, soldiers, and families during a year marked by both hope and unrest. Though small and easily overlooked, the coin served as a constant reminder of shared symbols and collective history, even when opinions about the country's future sharply differed. The 1969 D. Jefferson nickel ultimately stands as a modest but meaningful artifact of American life at the end of a turbulent decade. Its inscriptions speak of unity, faith, liberty, and national belonging, while its imagery ties those ideals to one of the nation's founding thinkers. Though it holds little monetary value today, the coin carries historical weight as a silent witness to a pivotal moment in U.S. history, reminding us that even the simplest objects can reflect the complex story of a nation. Next up, the 1971 United States 5-cent coin, commonly called the Jefferson nickel, bearing the inscriptions E Pluribus Unum, Monticello, Liberty, and In God We Trust, reflects an America that was transitioning from the turbulence of the 1960s into a new and uncertain decade. By 1971, the nation was experiencing shifts in politics, economics, and culture, with the Vietnam War still ongoing and public confidence in leadership under strain. Even as society questioned long-standing institutions, U.S. coinage maintained familiar designs and language, reinforcing continuity and national identity. The phrase E Pluribus Unum, meaning out of many, one, resonated strongly during a period when unity was challenged but still deeply desired. The obverse of the 1971 Jefferson nickel features the enduring left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, whose image had appeared on the coin for more than 3 decades. Jefferson symbolized intellectual freedom, democratic ideals, and the philosophical foundations of the United States. The word liberty appears beside the date, 1971, quietly asserting the nation's core value at a time when its definition was being debated in courts, campuses, and communities. The inscription, In God We Trust, officially adopted as the national motto years earlier, continued to reflect the country's moral language during the Cold War era. On the reverse, Monticello stands as a powerful symbol of American enlightenment and personal legacy. Designed by Jefferson himself, the building represented balance, reason, and curiosity, traits that contrasted sharply with the political unrest of the early 1970s. Above Monticello is the inscription E pluribus unum, while below are Monticello, 5 cents, and United States of America, grounding the coin firmly in its national purpose. The familiar image of the estate offered a sense of permanence as Americans adjusted to rapid social and economic changes. The year 1971 marked a turning point in U.S. economic history as President Richard Nixon ended the direct convertibility of the U.S. dollar to gold, effectively closing the Bretton Woods system. While this monumental decision reshaped global finance, everyday coins like the nickel continued to circulate unchanged, unaffected in appearance, but existing within a shifting monetary landscape. The 1971 Jefferson nickel thus belongs to the first era of fully fiat American currency, adding subtle historical significance to an otherwise ordinary coin. The D Mint mark indicates that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint, a key facility responsible for producing large volumes of circulating coinage. In 1971, the Denver Mint produced millions of nickels to meet the demands of commerce across the country. Because of this high output, the 1971 D Jefferson nickel is common today, especially in circulated condition. Its widespread use made it a familiar object in daily transactions, from grocery stores to gas stations, reflecting the rhythms of everyday American life. The composition of the 1971 nickel remained the standard copper-nickel alloy, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This durable mixture ensured the coin could withstand heavy circulation during a time of rising inflation and increased reliance on small-denomination currency. Unlike earlier silver-based coins, the nickel's value was purely symbolic and functional, reinforcing its role as a tool of exchange rather than a repository of intrinsic wealth. This practicality mirrored broader economic realities facing American households. From a design perspective, the 1971 Jefferson nickel belongs to the later phase of the original Monticello reverse, before future redesigns and commemorative changes reshaped U.S. coinage. Collectors often examine these coins for strike quality, especially the detail of Monticello's steps and Jefferson's hair. While most examples show noticeable wear from circulation, well-preserved pieces can still display sharp details and reflective surfaces. The coin's appeal lies more in historical context and condition than in rarity. As the United States entered the 1970s, the Jefferson nickel continued to pass silently through the hands of a diverse and changing population. It circulated during a time of generational shifts, evolving cultural values and economic uncertainty, serving as a constant presence in everyday exchanges. Though unnoticed by most, the coin linked Americans across regions and backgrounds through shared symbols and common use. The 1971 D. Jefferson nickel ultimately stands as a modest but meaningful artifact of an America in transition. Its inscriptions express unity, faith, liberty, and national identity, while its imagery connects those ideals to one of the nation's founding thinkers. Though it holds little monetary value today, the coin carries historical importance as a quiet witness to economic change and social transformation, reminding us that even the simplest objects can reflect a nation's evolving story. Next up, the 1983 United States 5-cent coin, known as the Jefferson nickel and marked with a P for the Philadelphia Mint, belongs to a quieter but important chapter in American history. By the early 1980s, the nation was emerging from economic hardship marked by inflation, high interest rates, and unemployment. In 1983, there was a growing sense of cautious optimism as economic recovery began to take hold. Everyday objects like the nickel reflected stability and continuity at a time when Americans were eager for normalcy. The familiar words, e pluribus unum, reminded citizens that unity remained a core national ideal, even after years of economic and social strain. On the front of the 1983 P. Jefferson nickel appears the well-known portrait of Thomas Jefferson, a figure long associated with independence, reason, and democratic principles. Jefferson's image had become a constant presence in American pockets by this time, symbolizing endurance rather than change. The word liberty appears beside the date, 1983, quietly reinforcing the nation's founding value during a decade defined by renewed emphasis on individual freedom, free markets, and personal responsibility. The inscription "In God We Trust" continued to reflect the cultural and moral language deeply rooted in American public life. The reverse of the coin features Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home and one of the most recognizable buildings in U.S. coinage history. By 1983, this design had been in use for decades, giving it a sense of familiarity and tradition. Monticello represented intellect, balance, and thoughtful design, qualities admired in a time when Americans were reassessing priorities after economic difficulty. Above the building is E Pluribus Unum, while below are Monticello, 5 cents, and United States of America, clearly defining the coin's identity and purpose in everyday commerce. The year 1983 is notable in U.S. coin history because it followed a period of major changes in circulating coinage materials and minting practices. Rising metal prices in the late 1970s had caused concerns about the cost of producing coins, leading to changes in other denominations. Although the nickel retained its traditional copper-nickel composition, the emphasis in 1983 was efficiency and durability. Coins were made to circulate heavily, reflecting practical priorities over artistic innovation. The P Mint mark indicates that this coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a facility with deep historical roots dating back to the founding of the nation. By the 1980s, the Philadelphia Mint was producing large quantities of coins to meet national demand. The 1983 P. Jefferson nickel was minted in high numbers, making it common in circulation. Its widespread use meant it became part of ordinary routines, exchanged for small purchases, change at cash registers, and everyday necessities. Economically, the early 1980s marked a shift toward recovery and renewed consumer confidence. The 1983 nickel circulated alongside rising employment and slowing inflation, becoming part of a slowly improving daily life for many Americans. Unlike earlier eras, when coins carried precious metal value, this nickel's worth was purely symbolic and functional. It represented trust in the monetary system rather than intrinsic material wealth, aligning with the modern financial structure of the United States. Collectors today often view the 1983 P. Jefferson nickel through the lens of condition rather than rarity. Because many were heavily circulated, high-quality examples with sharp details and minimal wear can be harder to find. Particular attention is often given to the clarity of Jefferson's facial features and the definition of Monticello's architectural lines. While not rare, well-preserved pieces offer insight into minting quality during a time when production efficiency was a priority. Culturally, the nickel passed through American life during a decade defined by technological growth, changing media, and shifting global dynamics. In 1983, personal computers were entering homes, the Cold War continued to shape foreign policy, and popular culture was rapidly evolving. The Jefferson nickel did not change its appearance to reflect these developments, instead serving as a steady, familiar object amid innovation and transformation. The 1983 P. Jefferson nickel ultimately stands as a symbol of endurance and practicality rather than drama or rarity. Its inscriptions speak of unity, faith, liberty, and national identity, while its imagery ties modern America to its founding ideals through Thomas Jefferson and Monticello. Though modest in value, the coin represents everyday trust in the nation's systems and serves as a quiet reminder that history often lives not only in grand events, but also in the ordinary objects people use every day. Next up, the 1988 United States 5-cent coin, the Jefferson nickel struck at the Philadelphia Mint and identified by the P Mint mark, belongs to a period marked more by quiet continuity than dramatic upheaval. America in 1988 was approaching the close of the Cold War era, with a growing sense that long-standing global tensions might soon ease. Daily life felt steadier than in previous decades, and that sense of stability was reflected in everyday objects like coinage. The familiar words e pluribus unum on the nickel carried a calm confidence, suggesting unity not as a struggle, but as an established reality woven into ordinary American life. The front of the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel presents Thomas Jefferson in a composed, thoughtful profile, a design that by this time felt timeless rather than historical. Jefferson's presence on the coin no longer served as an introduction to his legacy, but as a reminder of enduring principles such as reason, independence, and self-government. The word liberty sits beside the date 1988, understated yet firm, echoing the national mood of quiet assurance. "In God we trust" remains prominently placed, reflecting how faith-based language had become a stable, unquestioned part of U.S. public symbolism by the late 1980s. Turning to the reverse, Monticello appears with clean, familiar lines, representing balance, intellect, and personal vision. By 1988, this image had circulated for half a century, making it one of the most recognized buildings in American coin history. E pluribus unum, above Monticello, reinforces the idea that unity is built on shared foundations, while 5 cents and United States of America below firmly define the coin's role in everyday exchange. The design does not seek attention. Instead, it offers reassurance through familiarity. The year 1988 was a moment of transition rather than transformation. Politically, the United States was preparing for a presidential election that would soon bring a new administration. Economically, consumer confidence was relatively strong, and inflation was under control compared to earlier decades. The Jefferson nickel circulated through this environment as a quiet participant, exchanged in grocery stores, parking meters, school cafeterias, and corner shops, touching lives without ceremony or notice. The P mint mark signifies production at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest mint in the United States and a symbol of continuity in American coinage. In 1988, Philadelphia produced large quantities of nickels to meet national demand, making the 1988 P nickel widely available. Because so many were struck, the coin is common today, especially in circulated condition. Its value lies not in scarcity, but in how completely it represents everyday American money of its time. The composition of the 1988 nickel remained the traditional copper-nickel alloy, chosen for durability rather than intrinsic worth. This reflected a modern understanding of money as a tool of trust and function, not precious metal value. The coin was built to last through years of use, and many examples still show the marks and wear of long circulation. Each scratch and softened edge tells a quiet story of movement, exchange, and daily life. Collectors often view the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel as a condition-based coin. While most examples are worn, uncirculated pieces with strong detail and clean surfaces can be appealing. Attention is usually given to the sharpness of Jefferson's features and the architectural clarity of Monticello. These details reflect minting quality during a time when efficiency and consistency were the primary goals of U.S. coin production. Culturally, the coin moved through an America increasingly shaped by technology, television, and global awareness. In 1988, personal computers, cable news, and fast communication were becoming normal parts of life. Yet the Jefferson nickel remained unchanged, acting as a physical link to earlier generations. It reminded Americans that while tools and lifestyles evolve, certain symbols remain constant. The 1988 P. Jefferson nickel ultimately stands as a symbol of steadiness and reliability. It does not mark a crisis or a revolution, but rather a moment when the nation moved forward with quiet confidence. Its words speak of unity, liberty, and faith, and its design connects modern America to its philosophical roots. If you enjoyed this full coin history and want more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more detailed journeys through American coins and history.